The folks inside the White House tell lots of wonderful stories. They're just not telling the truth. Um, the story they're telling is 2025 was setting the table for 2026, which, by the way, in the ninth grade, I came home with a terrible report card. And I told my mum, don't worry, ninth grade is setting the table for 10th grade.
Hi, I'm Fergus Macphee and welcome to the Trump Report. You can watch us every day, Monday to Friday on our YouTube channel, and you can also listen and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Joining me today on the show is Justin Wolfers, Professor of Public Policy and Economics at the University of Michigan. Justin, it's been a while since we last spoke. How are you?
Mate, good to see you. I'm very excited. Very excited.
You and me both. It's always great to chat to you, and it usually means that there is some economic news in the US. And today it is that the US jobs data was released, and you called it the healthiest jobs report that we've seen in a while. Tell us why.
Yeah, okay, so I'm also going to walk some of that back.
Thought you might.
Is an Insta reaction where I was so excited, and I want to share that excitement with you, which is, look, coming into today, first of all, just so people know, this is probably the most important economic release. It's timely. It's the first serious, reliable release that tells us about what the economy's been doing in the new year. And the jobs report beat most people's expectations. And beat it because the economy had been creating almost no jobs for the last 6 to 12 months. And so creating 120,000 against that context is really, really good news. Also, the unemployment rate had been drifting up. The unemployment rate, very uppy-downy, I believe that's the technical term. A lot of statistical noise. So you're looking for the signal. So what I can tell you is it fell a tick from 4.4 to 4.3. And the question that one might ask is that part of the statistical noise? Is that the downy part of uppy-downy? Or does that suggest that drifting up has stopped?
And which is it?
Oh, I know, but I'm not telling. Mate, no one knows. But look, let me finish the second half of that thought, because I was pausing dramatically so you could ask a question. But, I started by saying that was the surge of excitement because the headline number looks better than we thought. A lot better. I don't want to mess around and underplay that. Second thing happened today is every year, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases what's called a benchmark revision. Fergus, if you ever want to make the person next to you at a dinner party yawn, start talking about benchmark revisions. I mean, it works. My problem is my partner's an economist and she loves it. She leans in. She says, Justin, tell me more. And she says some wonderful, she used to be the chief economist at the Department of Labor. So it gets very heated on these jobs days. But look, just think about what comes out each month as being the first draft of history. And then at the end of the year, what the wonks at the BLS do is they go back and they look at a complete set of employment records, nearly complete set of records for the entire economy. And they say, we now know what really happened. And so that's like the hardback version that goes on the bookshelf. You believe it. It says that the number of jobs we created in 2025 is far lower than we had thought. Less than half as many. Now, for nerds like me, we already had some indications that this was coming. It actually turned out to be worse than we thought. But roughly speaking, through the Trump presidency, the economy has been creating next to no jobs. And so
I've got the figure 181,000 for last year. I think you've got a slightly different figure. I've got the one without sort of farm jobs. Is that right?
We're both talking about non-farm jobs. But so I said 15,000 a month, which is 180,000. Isn't it? No, it's 150,000, but yeah, it's very low.
For a country the size of the US.
Yes, but, okay, the yes is, at any other time, if we're creating jobs at this rate, we would be freaking out. We'd be saying we're right on the cusp of a recession right now. We're screwed. Like, it would terrify people. Now, here's an important thing to understand. There's a concept called break-even jobs, which is how many jobs do we have to create each month to account for ongoing population growth? So just basically to stand still, to make sure things are as good today as they were yesterday. And in normal times, I remember a couple of years ago, that number was 200,000 It might be 150,000. Like, we've got to create a lot of jobs just because there's lots of babies being born and there's immigrants coming across and so on. The US has, for the first time in yours and my lifetime, suddenly pulled the brake on immigration, deported a bunch of people. A lot of people have left voluntarily. Population growth in the United States is almost zero. Could even be negative. Very hard thing to track, by the way. I know it doesn't sound like it should be, but it is. And so there's this deep question, which is how many jobs do we need to create to stay in place? Remember, I called that the break-even jobs number. That's a reason you want to take your eye off payrolls, which is telling you how many were created, but it's not thinking about how many did we need to create, and spend a lot more time looking at the unemployment rate, because the unemployment rate is the gap between how many jobs are out there and how many people want jobs. So the unemployment rate sort of takes account of what's going on with immigration and population growth and so on. Its problem is it comes from a smaller sample, so it's more uppy-downy. But that's where you want to look. And so the good news is it fell this month. The bad news is it's been rising for a couple of years. Now, I want to say one more thing about context and then get to what worries me. A context thing. If you see a good month, we did just see a good month, 120,000 jobs created. At the end of a bunch of mediocre, moderate months, you'd think, oh, maybe we're doing moderate or even better than moderate. If you see a good month after a bunch of pretty close to dreadful months, you might think, oh, maybe we're doing better than dreadful, but really we're doing worse than moderate. Maybe this is just a measurement error. Maybe they just happen to call maybe a lot of the February hiring happened in January. And so the fact that 2025 looks so bad, worse than we thought, makes you less excited to think we've turned the corner with one good month.
Especially, I mean, I know you're someone that said that you speak in charts, and you made a very interesting one today that shows kind of the discrepancies in where those jobs are. And essentially, is it pretty much at the moment all private education and healthcare that is driving jobs growth?
Yeah, I love the fact. And Fergus, if you've got a producer, have them show the charts, because they're pretty charts. I make them for people. Otherwise, you have to go to my social media.
If we have your permission, we will absolutely show the charts.
Absolutely. I love charts. I love permission. Consent. Look at this. It's incredible. You are, okay. So here's the real concern, and I don't quite know what to make about it, but I know it matters a lot, which is that outside of, I called it the healthcare and private education sector, the truth is almost all of that's healthcare. There's not that many people educated. So let's just call it healthcare. That sector over the past year has created 773,000 jobs. All right, that's a number that's hard to scale, but the following helps you. The rest of the economy, everyone else, if you're not wearing a lab coat and a bit of a stethoscope or at least scrubs, or you're typing insurance claims into a computer and denying people their benefits, if you're not one of those people, the rest of the economy has shed jobs over the last year throughout the Trump term. 414,000 jobs. And this is the point. If it weren't for the healthcare sector and the rest of the economy were actually shedding jobs at that rate, 414,000 over a year, what's that? That's about 35,000 a month. Then we'd get the big red alarm and we'd be woo, woo, woo. Now that didn't happen because the healthcare sector did grow. There's a deep question here. Is that good growth? Is it useless growth? Are these highly productive jobs? Or is this more waste in the American healthcare system? I think we're all confused why it's even happening at all. What's going on in health? Are people sick? Like, is this a bounce back after COVID? We haven't had a big healthcare reform. I don't think it's on anyone's bingo card, but it does raise questions about the sustainability of this economic expansion through the rest of the economy if everyone else is shedding jobs.
I'm going to ask an incredibly reductive question, so I apologize in advance. So are we, in your view, looking at a healthy job market or not?
Depends if you include the healthcare sector. So look, today it was a good headline coming from a weak baseline showing real fears about most of the economy. Is that too? I got that down to like 14 words or something, 12 words, 13 words. Like I can't be fully reductive here. Look, if you're not worrying, you're not paying attention. But if you're not excited that we created more jobs than we otherwise thought, then you're not changing your views as we learn more.
And if you are the president this year, obviously we've got the midterms come November. I think at the moment, on average, his net polling on immigration and the economies is the lowest it's been so far in the second term. If you just take the kind of data set we've seen today, what story are you trying to tell if you're in government?
Depends. Do I have to be honest? Because the folks inside the White House tell lots of wonderful stories. They're just not telling the truth. The story they're telling is 2025 was setting the table for 2026, which, by the way, in the 9th grade, I came home with a terrible report card. And I told my mum, don't worry, 9th grade is setting the table for 10th grade.
I think I might have done a bit of that as well.
Yeah, my mum didn't believe me. She basically inferred that I'd done terribly at school, and the fact that I did terribly in 9th grade didn't augur well. In fact, said the opposite, said I was in trouble when it came to 10th grade. I've got good news. I turned it around in the 11th grade.
I'm glad you mentioned something about setting the tone there, because this is a little bit different, but we do another show called The Tech Report. You actually yourself have been a guest on it once. And while we've kind of seen this rise in job data today, I've also seen a lot of other kind of posts and articles. I'm not sure what's in the air exactly today, but they're essentially saying that for AI, the moment is now, right? And 2026 is going to be kind of the year that everything changes in terms of productivity accelerating and job losses. So I know you don't like to make predictions, but as we kind of go through the year, would you expect some very different job results for some months?
So that's really hard. So there's a bunch of different AI stories, and they depend on the time horizon. So first of all, the story of 2025 was building data centers. And it means for guys who lay concrete, there was a lot of jobs, right? But once you walk into a data center, you don't see any people, you just see machines talking to each other. So nearly half of American output growth through 2025 was due to the construction of data centers and the build out. So a huge part of our story, but not a huge part of people's story because there's not a lot of people involved in that. Another story that you're hearing a lot right now is that college graduates are finding it hard to get work, and they are. A lot of people suggest that that is AI, and I think there's two pieces of evidence that suggest it's not so far. The first is basically what's happening is the economy has almost no hiring and almost no firing. I've overstated the point, but even unemployment can be stable-ish if you've got a lot of hiring and a lot of firing, or not much hiring and not much firing. We've got not much firing and not much hiring. That's great right, it's great if you've got a job, but if you're fresh out of school and you need a job, no hiring is really bad news. And so what's happening to young people, and particularly young university graduates, is largely a function of the lack of hiring, which can happen even though the rest of the economy is still doing okay because there's not much firing, right? So there's a big demographic thing going on there. Could that change over the next few years? Sure. I spent my morning with Claude Code, and I was writing a program, despite being an economist, that previously I would have had to hire a couple of contractors to do. If I were a young coder, I would be terrified. If I were a young translator, I would go back to college. Those are very specific sectors. Now, when you look at the rate of AI adoption throughout the US economy, and here it's a question for each of the members of the audience, including you, has your firm fundamentally reorganized itself around this new technology? And the answer for the University of Michigan is no. I suspect. What's your answer?
No, I mean, I would say I use AI day to day, but no. The answer to that question would be no.
Right. And so this idea that it's fundamentally, so it has changed translators, it is changing law firms, and it has changed coding. Anthropic say that its coders don't code anymore. So the idea that it has transformed everything in the short run, I think, is probably wrong. But at some point over the next few years, you said next year, but I said I'm less sure about the next year. Over the next few years, it's going to creep in and it's going to become a reality, but it's going to play out slower than folks in Silicon Valley wish and faster than folks who want to ostrich through this believe.
And for, leaders around the world, but this is the Trump report, so we'll go to the US and we'll talk about Donald Trump. Is that not an existential problem?
Yeah, it is. I'm just going to tell you about my family dinner table, if I may, not because it's the most interesting dinner table, but because I think it gives you a sense of different feelings. So I am an economist. I deal with numbers. If I can figure out ways of coding and crunching those numbers more effectively, it's like giving me a cape. And I deal in words a lot too. And so I feel like this made me Superman. I love this. I'm so excited. I can be more productive. I'm doing all this other stuff. My son likes to draw. He's 13, loves to draw. And he thinks that what these machines are spitting out is bullshit. And he thinks they're undermining the very notion of art. I'm not going to argue with him. My daughter is going to school and she's not cheating on her homework. And she says that makes her part of the minority. That means she has to work twice as hard to earn an A as she did 2 years ago, and she didn't ask for this. So to her, and in my day job as a teacher, the big movement in education for the last 30 years has been have smaller assignments for the students to do at home, as opposed to the old British system, which is just finals at the end of the year, and you either handle the stress or you get kicked out. And we can't do that anymore and so therefore it's forced a reinvention of higher education. And so I don't feel anxious about that. I'm running towards it, but many of my colleagues have ostriched. Others feel anxious. Some feel resentful that they have to do new work, that they have to undo 20 or 30 years of course development. So all of those things are true. We're anxious, we're smarter, we're more productive, but we're not sure we're the ones that are going to gain. And we don't yet know where those gains are going to go. We can talk more about that in a very long episode one day. But yeah, there's lots of reasons that everything feels up in the air.
We will, I'm sure, come back to the topic here on the Trump Report and also over on our channel, The Tech Report. But for now, Justin Wolfers, thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure, mate. Take care.